So, if we can have an image in the background, if we can create a little bit of depth by adding layers to our page, we can also have, with our CSS, we can have multiple background images. Now, our previous example where we saw in the body a background image attribute that's built into HTML. That is not the way that it is implemented here in CSS. And just remember that CSS provides for us a lot more fine and granular control over how it is that we want our pages to be displayed. So we cannot do in HTML, we cannot do multiple background images, but here with CSS, we can. So this is on page 156 in your text. And essentially, here's our two background images. The first of them is this quasi-opaque coffee cup. The second of them is this stylized coffee image. So this has to be taken care of in the CSS. So if we just scroll down a little bit here, we can see that that's what we have with this body element. So remember, there are two pieces. There are two pieces to every attribute. There's the property and then there's the value. So here we can see our body attribute, right? And here, background, there's our background. Here's a background image as well. We have our first background image. So that's the property that we're looking here to set. And then with this URL, with that URL, we are giving to it the background image. So the coffeepour.jpg. Here, a little bit further down, we have our background URL coffee GIF, no repeat, left bottom. So this background is our secondary background property. The value that we're giving to this is the URL, no repeat, left, and bottom. So that means, and let me scroll here, there we go. That means we have our background, no repeat, left. So you can see that it's actually down here on the left hand side, and bottom of our I'm going to call it here a section. I know you're not seeing all of the code for this. It's really not the bottom of our page. We have these inside of either a class or an ID. We are going to see a lot better use of this next week in chapter 7, but we already did see classes and IDs just a little bit briefly in chapter 4. So here, by way of a reminder, a class or an ID is a developer-defined section, a small portion of your page, or it can be a very, very large portion of your page. You get to decide. So a class is something that can be repeated multiple times. An ID is something that you can only have appear once on a page. So think of your student ID. An ID belongs to you specifically, but a class, I can have numerous versions of this class running at the same time, and that would be okay. The same happens here on a web page. So at any rate, we will see again those classes and IDs, but here we've got the idea of background images. We can do this with two background images on the same CSS attribute because, again, CSS is much more robust and fine and granular than is HTML. So we can see here, background image, there's our URL, the coffeepour.jpg. And down here, we've got another background image. We've got the coffee GIF. That's the little, I could say GIF, I suppose. The coffee GIF, that's the little stylized coffee cup. And there are other values that we can assign to that. No repeat, so it does not repeat, and it is located left and bottom. So images, again, now I am not here to indicate how fancy you think that this page is, but with one small CSS attribute, look what we were able to do to this demo web page. We were able to provide for it background images that help the design, that give it style, that communicate a message to our unknown potential future user. Come here to Coffee House for coffee. That is successful web design.